Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are mapping out what is honestly one of the most drastic, mind-blowing human transformations you could ever imagine. We're going to trace the incredible true story of Uthman Ibn Farooq. We'll be following his journey from the absolute deepest, darkest trenches of the criminal underworld all the way to a profound spiritual awakening. It's a story about survival, incredibly brutal realities, and ultimately, absolute redemption.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To get in, you gotta kill. To get out, you have to die. You know, we hear stuff like that in movies, but this is the real, chilling, claustrophobic reality of the blood in, blood out code. This wasn't some Hollywood script at all. This was the absolute rule of the streets where Uthman grew up. It is a terrifying trap, but it really makes you wonder, how does someone even end up in a situation like that?
Well, that brings us to Chapter 1, Innocent Entry to the Underworld and Survival in San Diego. See, this wasn't some kid who idolized the gangster lifestyle, not at all. He was completely out of his depth. Uthman actually moved from Pakistan to the UK and then eventually to a really rough neighborhood in the US when he was around 8 years old. His mom sent him to elementary school wearing a little suit and a bow tie. And tragically, he got beaten up on his very first day. Fast forward to when he's 12, he steps in to defend a friend and just gets brutally beaten by older members of the local Lomas gang. When his dad found out, he retaliated violently against those gang members, and suddenly, literally overnight, at just 12 years old, Uthman became the prime target for an entire gang. 500. Let that sink in. That is the staggering number of guys in the Lomas gang who were now actively hunting a 12-year-old boy. Just walking into school meant facing the absolute certainty that he was going to be killed. So what was his only lifeline? A rival gang, which had about 600 members, offered him protection, but only if he joined them. Faced with the choice between literally dying or taking up the gang life, Uthman took the offer. He didn't want the shoes, he didn't care about the money. He just didn't want to die.
Moving on to Section 2, the reality of a shot caller, cartels and the Council of 13. We really have to strip away the romanticized, glamorous myths of gang life here because Uthman's ascent was rapid and it was ruthless. He was incredibly smart and strategic, so he definitely didn't stay a low-level member for long. By the time he was 15, he was part of the gang's top leadership, known as the Council of 13. He basically became a mastermind. He was planning armed robberies, wielding immense power, and pulling in serious money. But things get incredibly dark from here because they eventually became foot soldiers for the Tijuana cartels.
Working with the cartels meant constantly crossing the border into Mexico, totally surrounded by actual military-grade assassins and massive stocks of $100 bills. But it also brought him face-to-face with unimaginable brutality. You see, the cartels only called you for two reasons: to reward you or to kill you in the most painful ways imaginable. Uthman vividly recalls the unforgettable, horrific smell of humans being burned alive in oil drums. This wasn't a movie scene. This was the terrifying reality of his day-to-day life by his mid-teens. Which leads us into Section 3, the grave epiphany, 9 bullets meant for him. Living a life where death is constantly knocking at your door really forces you to confront your own mortality. But for Uthman, it ended up hitting devastatingly close to home. 9 bullets. 9 bullets from a .357 Magnum. That's what killed one of his closest childhood friends, a guy who was basically an older brother to him. And here is the truly tragic twist. Uthman actually had 2 phone numbers to meet up with girls that night. He gave one to his friend and kept the other for himself. The location his friend went to? It was a setup. It was a complete ambush by a rival gang. Those bullets that tore his best friend apart were actually meant for Uthman. So, picture this. He's standing there at his best friend's funeral, and this profound realization just washes over him. In life, these guys had it all: a custom '64 Impala, stacks of cash hidden under their mattresses, and so much street influence that his name alone struck fear into people. But what actually goes into the grave? None of it. No money, no cars, no reputation. Just him. Burying his friend made Uthman realize the absolute, utter emptiness of everything he was out there risking his life for.
Now, completely desperate for meaning, he starts this relentless search for truth across multiple faiths. He tried going to Catholic confession boxes, but he found that confessing gang violence on a Sunday and feeling totally absolved didn't actually push him to change his life. He asked Protestant preachers, he visited Buddhist temples, he explored Jewish synagogues, but he kept getting kicked out for asking too many hard, logical questions. Finally, he sat down with some Muslims at a local masjid. He started asking about salvation, death, and sin, and they told him about the Islamic concept of sincere repentance. They even shared a story of a man who had killed 99 people but was still capable of being forgiven if he genuinely, truly changed. For a gang member carrying that much guilt, this evidence-based theology was exactly what he needed to hear. He converted to Islam.
All right, Section 4, a dangerous defiance, leaving the 600. Remember that absolute rule we established at the beginning? To get out, you have to die? It's a terrifying question to have to ask yourself. How in the world do you leave a 600-strong gang when the only accepted exit is death? Uthman went to the leadership and told them he was Muslim now, and he could no longer participate in gang activities. They basically told him, hey, we respect your religion, but the rules are the rules. If he wasn't going to put in the work, they were coming to kill him. No exceptions. And this kicks off the most stressful period of his entire life. He knew their tactics inside and out because, well, he designed them. He knew they preferred to attack right at 4 a.m. So every single night, this isolated teenager slept up in an attic vent, armed with guns, staying wide awake just to protect his mother. He was fully expecting his 600 former brothers to show up at any moment and massacre his family. He was literally relying on nothing but his newfound faith to get him through the night. Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, Return for Redemption. Unarmed in the alley. Eventually, by some miracle, the attack didn't come. But sitting there in safety, Uthman had yet another epiphany. He realized he couldn't just walk away and let his former friends die in ignorance. He had to go back. And the contrast of this return is just stunning. Think about it. The old Uthman would enter the hood as a heavily armed shot caller, backed by lookouts, weapons, and serious cartel connections. But the new Uthman, he walked right back into the single most dangerous, highly fortified drug-dealing alley in the city, completely unarmed. He was wearing a traditional white Islamic thobe, carrying a miswak, which is just a small wooden toothbrush, and he had absolutely nothing but his faith as protection. He literally walked right up to hardened gang members who were actively plotting his murder. They looked at him and swore to God he wouldn't walk out of that alley alive. And Uthman, he didn't flinch. He just asked them for one thing, 5 minutes. He asked for just 5 minutes to explain exactly why he changed his life before they pulled the trigger. Well, those 5 minutes turned into a massive 2.5-hour dawah, or preaching session. He looked them in the eye and reminded them of the friends they had all just buried. He asked them, what did they die for? Street names that they don't even own? He completely shattered the illusion. He told them point blank that the cartels do not care about them and the game doesn't care about them. He asked what they were doing with their incredibly short lives, and he spoke to them about God, about heaven, and about hell. And miraculously, not only did they let him live, but over the next few weeks, 12 of those hardened, active gang members actually converted to Islam. That single, unbelievable act of courage sparked a massive movement. 3,500. By stepping up and starting an organization to formally invite people to faith, Uthman has seen roughly 3,500 people convert to Islam in just the last 2 years alone. From orchestrating street violence and cartel operations, he now spends his life orchestrating spiritual awakenings. So, I want to leave you with this thought. If a teenager, trapped in the absolute deepest, most terrifying darkness of the cartel and gang underworld, can find the light, completely reinvent himself, and go on to save thousands of others, what is keeping you from changing your own life today? The gate of repentance, the opportunity to pivot and start over, is always open. You just have to have the courage to walk through it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this story leaves you just as inspired as it left me. See you next time.